My name's Tammy. I'm a single mom. I have 2 boys, Caden, my 8-year-old, and Joel, 22. Caden's here with me tonight, but his older brother can't be. He's in St. Croix Correctional Facility. That's where his addiction for meth has gotten him. My battle to save him started 10 years ago. I thought I could trust a parent that was watching him, and I couldn't. During that next year, Joel admitted to using marijuana, alcohol, acid, shrooms, even heroin. In high school, he abused prescription drugs, over-the-counter cold medications, resulting in a drug overdose. It's easier for me to say that if it's there, he's tried it. It disturbs me that he sees himself as a drug connoisseur. He feels that he can help others properly use these drugs. These are his words, not mine. My response was, "You're a glorified drug pusher." He doesn't look like an addict or a drug dealer, but he is. But he's my son, and no matter what, I love him. Many addicts will deal to support their habits, and as their habits get worse, they have to be that much more charming, manipulative, and even dangerous. They become addicted to the easy money as much as they do to the drugs, and Joel loved both. About 1.5 years ago, Joel had his first positive meth test. He swore he'd never try it, and the test was wrong, and I tried to believe him, but deep down I knew it wasn't true. September of last year, my son was again arrested, and he had another positive meth test. Shortly after his arrest, I went to see him. You know what I remember? Yellow teeth. My son's darker skin, and he's always had perfect teeth. On that day, I noticed they were yellow, and that was the day I finally admitted to myself that he was using meth. He spent 5 months in jail. He got out January 19th of this year, and he looked better than he had in a long time. His teeth were white again. The sores that I thought were acne had all healed up. As a family, we figured he deserved the chance to prove he was serious about staying clean. But he was only worried about repairing his street rep and getting his girlfriend off of meth. So we moved her in too. I hadn't seen her in months, and we were shocked by how much weight she had lost. Her eyes were lifeless, her hair. She spent days in the bathroom, coughing, spitting up blood. Her throat was dried out and raw from snorting the meth. During the next week, all she did was eat, drink, and sleep. But as she returned to normal, our house started to take on a new life. Joel was spending quality time with his brother that he'd never done. There was love and laughter in our house and in our lives. We could sit down and talk with respect we never had. We thought the worst was over, but a family can fall a lot farther. Valentine's Day of this year, my son and girlfriend decided that they were going to go hang out at a friend's house. They were gone for 3 days. Now, privacy is not a right in my home, so on a gut feeling, I hacked his Facebook Messenger. Reading the messages, it appeared he was dealing again, and if he was dealing, then he was using. I expected relapses, but I didn't know what to do. On Thursday, they returned, and though he seemed fine, I knew she was high. Joel insisted she was just tired, and I wanted to believe him. I sat there with him on the couch, and I listened to every lie he told me of what he had or had not done while they were gone. He told me he was going to go out with a friend of his, but what his messenger showed was that he went to meet a different friend and sell some pot. I sat up that night not knowing what to do, and I tried to stay strong, and I wanted to hold on to the faith. I decided I needed to talk to his probation officer and pull him in for a PO hold. Maybe we could scare him and get him back on straight, because you don't want to give up on your kids. It was sometime during that night, though, that it dawned on me. If he'd left my house to deal drugs, that means he'd had it in the house with my 8-year-old. Friday, there was no school, and Joel was spending time with his brother. I figured he'd sold the drugs, so they weren't in my home anymore. I tried to call his probation officer, but she was out on home visits. Well, I checked his messenger again, and at that moment, right then, he was getting ready to set up a deal out of my front door while watching his 8-year-old little brother. In less than that minute, I literally thought of a dozen ways that it could go wrong for my son. Caden was due the next day to celebrate his 8th birthday party, and he was supposed to have 6 kids spending the night. And I knew that they were all at risk if I didn't act now. I can only describe as what I did as being forced to cut off a diseased limb to try to save the other one. You don't think, you react. It's the most god-awful position to be in, and I don't want another parent to have to do it. So before I could talk myself out of it, I left work and I went to the police department with the messages. I couldn't get Caden out of the home before the police showed up. They were awesome. They were low-key. He really got a kick out of the canine unit. But pieces of him broke that day, and he clung to me because he knew his brother was going back to jail. The officers found what I would describe as a large amount of marijuana, a bottle of urine he was planning to use so he could pass his food stamps for the drug screen, and an ice cube gum container. It had meth in. Meth in a gum container. I can't even get rid of this because it's a constant reminder that what kid would think there was drugs in something like this? They wouldn't have thought twice. They would have taken it. It could have been mine. It could have been anybody else's. How could my son, who said that he loved his family so much, risk everyone in that household? That day was February 19th, and that day I honestly realized that drugs were more important than his own family. That night, I sat down and I called every parent to tell them what had happened, what we had found, what we had done, and to hope that they would still trust me enough to allow their kids to come to my house to spend the birthday with my son. Luckily, they did, because I can't imagine how Caden would have been hurt to lose his birthday too. But I'm glad that I can remember February 19th for what it was, because if I was remembering February 20th, it's because I'd have had to make a phone call to one of those parents and tell them, your child got meth in my home, and your child overdosed on meth in my home where they're supposed to be safe. Now, it's been terrible for Caden. He just walked out. For days, he hated me because I'm the one that called the cops. He actually told me that if I had waited, Joel would have sold all the drugs. They wouldn't have been in the house anymore. It would have been fine then. That's how an 8-year-old thinks. But how does somebody his age process this? Well, he lashed out. He lashed out at home. He lashed out at school. He started sleeping with the nightlight again. And he hated his brother. How could his brother love drugs more than us? It's been 7 months since that day, and Caden is just getting to the point where he'll talk about his brother again. But when Joel calls, he turns his back and he will not speak to him. Since then, there's been a darkness in our house, in our lives, in our hearts. We should probably have been in counseling, but you tend to just kind of exist. You don't realize what's truly happening. Caden and I were recently talking, and he mentioned how the house was no longer happy. They had been happier than ever when Joel was home, and we're struggling to get that back. It's happening slowly and in part thanks to the Taylor County Drug Opposition's Meth Project. It's kind of given me an outlet and some purpose. I've also been working on starting a meth support group for other parents, family members of the loved ones that use meth. I have felt so alone through all of this, and I know there's got to be others out there that going through it, probably even worse. And I want you to know we're here. We know. We want to help. In January, Joel's supposed to be released from prison, but there's not really any resources here to help him if he wants to stay clean. Where will he live? Who's going to hire him? Who's going to give him a chance? I want him to have a fighting chance. I don't want to lose my son. I'm still fighting for him, but I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted from waiting for the phone to ring to tell me that he's dead or that he's responsible for somebody else's death. When I started writing this, I got my biweekly phone call from Joel. I told him that I did find some resources in the county he's currently in. He told me he wasn't interested. He told me that he's maintaining contact with some of his meth friends, one who's currently serving prison time also. And I questioned his commitment to staying clean and starting over, but he told me all he wants to do is get high. He prefers a lot of other drugs and is not willing to give them up. He said that meth is a nasty drug and he would never want anybody to get into, but that he finds that the drug that he hates the most is the drug that he will end up using the most. As he said, it is now his unfortunate drug of choice. While this is the closest he's ever gotten to admitting being addicted to meth, it breaks my heart to know he's not ready to fight for his life. Those phone calls really mess us up. We start to question why we fight so hard for him. I even stopped writing this story and told myself I couldn't do this anymore. But I realized I'm not doing this for him. We struggle every day to try to find a normal life again, and he's not going to stop us. So I'm cutting off the diseased arm, and I'm hoping that I can keep Caden safe. But I can't do it alone. Medford has a problem, and we need to address it now. And it takes an entire community to raise a child, and I want this community to be safe for all of ours.